Begin the current Daf in Pesachim Daf Nun Gimel. We begin 7 lines down at the top of the Yomit. Where the Gemara continues the discussion of the previous Daf regarding the time of beer, of getting rid of one's Shemitah produce. Hashem goes back to because of Cheskel to any time the Chaim. Hashem was doing this today's Daf. Some of the things we discuss in today's Daf are two seemingly contradictory verses about the time of the Shas HaBir, but exactly about certain produce we have to get rid of the Shemitah produce. Then we have, which according to Rashi, it seems like unrelated. Places he relates it more for the sugi itself, but several simonim or association between certain places and things that can be found in them. How that identifies those actual places themselves. Then we discuss with the next Mishnah, continuing on this theme of this parak makom shenagu, of minhagim of selling animals to goyim, which depends if they're small livestock, large livestock, and regarding eating roasted meat at the Seder, which also depends on minig. Then we discuss regarding Rabbi Shloimy, who encouraged people to eat gidi makulas, which could be a problem about kach and bachutz. Then we continue with the next Mishnah regarding makom shenagu. Some people had a custom to light a candle on the night of Yom Kippur, and some didn't. We'll see the reason why that is. Some important terms and concepts discussed in today's Daf of Bikurim, which are the first of the fruits of the Shivas Haminim in Eretz Yisrael. Egla Rufa, which is the decapitated calf, which is if you find a dead person on the road. And Gedim Kulas is a kid goat that it's roasted with its entrails, which all the intestines are like around it, so it's almost like it's an armored goat. That's how they would roast the Karm Pesach. So begin the current Daf, Nun Gimel, 7 lines down at the top of the Yomit, which are middle discussing the halachas of beer b'shmita, the halachas of getting rid of the produce when there's no more available for the wild animals. Then you have to get rid of it from inside. So the Gemara brings trouble in the brisa. It's more of a technical brisa, but we're going to see it seems to be a contradiction. The brisa says, "Eichel ba'anav, you're allowed to continue eating grapes until you finish the deloyos." Deloyos from the word of deli, which are basically the grapes that are hanging on poles and sticks. Shal eichel. Eichel is the name of a place which had many vineyards. So up until if there's still grapes on those vineyards, then it's okay. You don't have to get rid of those in your house from the Shemitah produce. Now, it continues the brisa. But if there's places that for some reason they still have later on grapes, then you can still continue eating in your house. As long as there's some grapes out there in the wild, you can continue eating in your house. That was regarding grapes. You could eat for the olives until you have the last one still available out in the fields in Teku, which was also a place of olives as the Mishnah teaches Menachas. So again, as long as there's some available outside, you can hold on to the Shemitah produce in your house. He says a different area until they have the latest olives in Gush Chalab, which also had a lot of olives, which was in the portion of Shebet Osher, that the pasuk says with Table B'Shem and Ragloi, as the Gemara says in Menachas over there, that they had a lot of oil over there. Again, as long as there's still somewhere out there olives, Kadeshi on the Yaitzi, that a poor person could go out. Ve'in Maitzin, he's not going to find Loi B'Neifer, not in the branch, Loi B'Kara, and not in the roots, Reveh, Reva B'Kab, then you're going to have to get rid of it. Up until that point, you could hold on to it inside your house. Eichel McGregor's, now we go on, we spoke about grapes and olives, now we talk about Eichel McGregor's. You could eat the dried figs at Sheichlu Pagi Beisini until it finishes up the figs of the place of Beisini. Again, because that's the latest place where there's going to be figs. Now, Amr B'Yehudi disagrees on that. He says, no, like Huskru, it wasn't mentioned in the Beis HaMedrash Pagi Beisini, the unripe figs of Beisini, that it's considered as a fruit, that you could still eat your fruits in your house, the Shemitah produce, because it's still available out there in Beisini. Elena Meister. This place of Beis Hini, those unripish type of figs were only mentioned regarding the laws of Meiser, not regarding Shemitah, which is Pagi Beis Hini, the unripe figs of Beis Hini, Va'ahini, and also regarding the dates of the Tuvina, which was also the name of the place. So these Pagim and these dates, they were always small, they were never fully ripened, but still Chayavim B'Meiser, they're obligated in Meiser. And for that, we're telling you that it has halacha as pre. But that's Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, and he says that, but regarding Shemitah, we're not going to say it has a halacha of pre, so there's no more pre outside. So you can't rely on the Pagi Beis Hini at least. That's what he's saying. But again, regarding all the other ones, everyone agrees that it's the latest that is out there in the wild. Now the brisa continues, and we mentioned this in the previous Daf. Eichel mitzmar, you could eat dates at sheichla achan shebetzayer until the last ones in Tzayar have still dates out in the wild. Shemulilem says eichlin al shel bein hakipin. You can only eat if there's some dates out there by the palm fronds, on the lulavim branches on the palm tree. But the you can't eat from that which was between the thorns, and we brought this on the previous Daf on Lamed Beis, explaining this machlekes. Okay, but we saw different times for different fruits grapes and olives and dates and figs. When is the latest times you could still have them? The problem is, Veramina seems to be contradicting the following brisa. The brisa says, and it's going to say different timings. The brisa says, you can continue eating grapes until Pesach. That's not what we said in the previous brisa. We said a different qualification for grapes. We said until the ones in Eichel or whatever. Then we say bezation regarding olives and adatzeres up until shiur's time. That's when you can hold on to it. Begregers or dried figs ada Chanukah until Chanukah. Bitmar for days ada Purim until Purim. And parenthetically, V'amar Rabbi, he says Rabbi Yechanan, Tarti bas reyasa machlef. The last two ones he actually switches around. Actually, dried figs is up until Purim, and dates is up until Chanukah. Okay, but be that as it may, you see different timings over here. The other brisa said different qualifications. So the Gemara has two approaches. Either they're the same thing. One is just talking about location, and one is talking about timing. So it's not a contradiction. One you could say that you're right, but the first brisa said explicitly, if there are those that are later than them, you could eat on them. So in other words, it's not a difficulty. Yes, our brisa is saying that even as late as these times you could do it, because the first brisa was just picking what was common in those days, which places, but it's not a contradiction. Everyone agrees on that premise. The latest what's available in the wild is how late you could eat these fruits when you have the Shemitah produce in your house. Now the Gemara continues, which according to Rashi is more unrelated. Taisus shows how it's really part of the sugi, the way he interprets the sugi. But Tanya Lina Brisa, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, he says, similar harim, a sign for mountains, are milan, are golnut trees. Because as Rashi says, but regarding other trees on the mountains are not a good thing. And the ramification is that you wouldn't bring bikurim from those trees on the mountains, as the Gemara is going to explain later on. Similar makom, a sign for valleys, is the column, are date palm trees. Similar in the column, a sign for streams, are konim, are reeds, and the Gemara is going to explain each one of these. Similar shvela, a sign for lowlands, meaning a plain, not mountainous region. The Gemara again is going to explain the ramification. Is shikama, are sycamore trees, which they don't make any fruits. And says the Gemara of although there's no proof for the last one we just mentioned, there is an allusion to the Shnei, like it says the pasuk Melachim Aleph. So the Yitin HaMelech has a kesed b'Yerushalayim kabbanim. There was so much money that the king put the silver in Yerushalayim like stones. V'sarazim noten keshikmim, and the cedars he made like sycamores, asher b'shvela l'rayv, which are in abundance in the shvela. So you see from that pasuk that's normal for a shvela, for lowlands, to have shikamim, to have sycamore trees. But Rashi explains the reason why it's not a bona fide proof. You don't see from here that if there's no shikamim, if there's no sycamore trees, that's not called a shvela. As we'll shortly see, that's what we're trying to tell you, that these things need these items to identify them as that thing. So it's not a raya, but it is a zeichel adab. So the Gemara goes through each one of these. What's the ramification? When we say similar harm, a sign for mountains is milan, or golna trees, and similar makom, a sign for valleys, are dekalim, or date palm trees, is nafkim in l'bikurim. It has a halachic ramification regarding the bikurim, which are the first fruits of the shivas aminim, that when someone has, you have to bring it up. So the base of Mikdash did not. We learned in the Mishnah bikurim that says, imavim bikurim, you don't bring bikurim. First of all, it has to be from the 7 species, as the pasuk says by bikurim ashetovim ha'artzacha, that you can bring from your land. The Gemara Menachos that Pedal Mabez says, we learn that it says over here artzacha, and it says another pasuk eretz chitas etc. This over there is the praise of Eretz Yisrael, where we're talking about the shivas aminim. Also over here, it's the praise of Eretz Yisrael. So we learn that it has to be from the shivas aminim. We also learn that it has to be from the Mokum Meshubach. Has to be from the best places, because that's what the pasuk there was talking about, praising the land of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, it has to be from the shivas aminim. And Maloy Medekalim, you cannot bring it from the date palms, because as Rashi explains, tomorrow dates are one of the shivas aminim. Although the pasuk doesn't say dates, it says with dvash, it means the honey from dates. You cannot bring it from the date palms that are shebaharma are in the mountains, because it's not high quality, because as we said, the kalim are in the amakim. The date palms are in the valleys, meaning to say those on the mountains are not good. And also, v'loim peiros, you can't bring from the produce of grain shebamakim that are in the valleys, because the water gathers over there and it makes the grain all moldy and low quality. So you can't bring the grain from over there. So again, so we see that the significance of saying what's mountains and what's valleys are regarding bikurim, depending what type of trees. The date palms you not bring from the mountains, you bring from the valleys. And regarding the grain, you're bringing from, not from the valleys, you're bringing rather from, let's say, the higher areas. Then when we say siman l'nechalim, the sign for the valleys, for the streams, or kanim, or reeds, what's that nafka mean? That's a ramification l'nachal esim, for the raging stream. meaning for the halachas of Egla Rufa, which the pasuk says Nachal. So if it's a Nachal, it has to be that there are reeds that are growing over there. Then that's where you could go ahead and decapitate the calf. Similar Shvela, the sign for the lowlands are sycamore trees. Nafkami, that's a ramification. Like for business dealings, which means to say that if someone says, I'm selling you a Shvela, it's got to be sycamore trees. It says, now that you said that interpretation, that the ramification is for business, then cool it down with all of them could have that same ramification. If you're selling someone a mountain, or a valley, or a stream, or whatever it is, so then obviously that's going to have that qualification. That would be a ramification by all of them. We're continuing the next Mishnah, we're continuing this theme of this parak, which is all about Makom Shenogu. We started with Makom Shenogu related to Pesachim of Erev Pesach, before Chatzais we do Malacha. Now we say many Mishnayos regarding what the meaning of Makom is, and that the halacha follows like that. So Mishnah says, Makom Shenogu Limker Behemoth Dakla Nachem, a place that their custom is to sell small livestock, small animals, meaning small animals that are the types of category of animals that are small animals, that to a non-Jew, so then you can sell it. Makom Shelo Yinogu Limker, but a place that their custom is not to sell, because they're stringent on themselves, because maybe they might come to sell large livestock, so then halachas ein meichel, then you can't sell it. Now, but in any place, ein meichel now sell to a non-Jew large livestock, like let's say like a bull, like a cow. The reason for that is because Rabban will glazer that if we let you sell, you might come to lend, or you might come to lease it. Now, there's a problem because if you do either one of those things, it's really your animal, because you own it. And on Shabbos, your animal can't be doing work, what's called shiur behemtoi. So that's you're going to be violating when your animal's doing the work by the non-Jew. Also, another concern is that even if you're going to sell it, you might come to test it out on Erev Shabbos, and then you're going to be doing mechamer, as the Gemara says in the Masechet Daf Tetzvav Medal. So since the Jew has a Isra of Shvisa Behemtei on Shabbos, so we don't let you even sell it to the non-Jew. Now, that applies to Agolim, to calves, even though these are smaller, but they're from the larger livestock category. So it includes Pesachim and foals, which, although they themselves can't do work because they're still young, but they can be confused with the larger animals of that livestock. And this applies whether they're shleimim or if they're healthy and whole, v'shvurin, or if they're broken, because even though if the animal has an injury, it's not going to do work. So you're not going to have the problem about shvis and behemtoi. So why can't you sell it? Because it could be confused with when you sell a healthy animal. So therefore we don't let it, even if it's a smaller of the large livestock, or if it has an injury. However, he permits an animal that has a fracture, because you're not going to hold on to the non-Jew that you sell to is not going to hold on to it, because he can't work with it anyway, so he's going to slaughter it. So therefore, no Jew is going to see your animal by the non-Jew, and it's not going to cause another Jew to sell a Jew's animal to a non-Jew, because no one's going to see it, because the guy's not holding on to an injured animal, right? You work on the farm, anytime you had an injury, there's no point to holding on to, you're just going to be losing it, it's expensive for you to feed the animal, so therefore Rabbi Yehuda permits an animal with an injury. And the B'Meseira, Mata B'Sus. The B'Meseira permits also selling a horse to a non-Jew. The reason for that is because what do you do with a horse? A horse doesn't do malacha. A horse, what it does is you ride on it. Now, even if you would go ahead and test out the horse, Erev Shabbos, which was this whole concern, y'all sell it to the non-Jew, because Erev Shabbos, you might test it out, give him a test drive and show him how well the horse works, and it's already Shabbos. There's no reason to make a gzeira on that, because even if you would ride the horse on Shabbos, what are you doing already? You're doing Issa D'Rabbanan. Because the Mishnah in Masechet Alamedvavim base tells it by those who are rabbinically forbidden. It's only concerned because when you ride on the horse, you might come to tear off a branch or whatever it is. So therefore, he permits you selling a horse. Now, going back to the minhagim as they relate to Pesach, a place where the custom is to eat roasted meat on the Seder night, you could eat. A place where the custom is not to eat because it looks like you're eating the carbon Pesach out of the Beis Hamikdash, which is forbidden, so then you don't eat. Now, related to this last halacha, it says the Gemara Rabbi Yehuda Merabi says, it's forbidden for a person to say, this meat is for Pesach, even if it's already slaughtered. Why? What's the problem? It looks like you're sanctifying your animal as the carbon Pesach, and you're eating the carbon Pesach outside, which is an Isser. So therefore, a person shouldn't say this flesh is for Pesach, because that's saying that this is like as if he's making the carbon Pesach over here. Now, I'm not Papa. He says that's dafka bas, that's specifically for the meat. But wheat is not a problem. Why? It doesn't have any similarity to be makdashit. Because when he's saying that this wheat is for Pesach, what he means to say is the mintel of Pesach. It just means I'm keeping it for Pesach. I'm putting it away in the Pesach drawer. But we don't say that it looks like as if he's saying that he's going to sell it and buy the Korban Pesach with his money. That is no problem. It's only regarding meat. Now this the Gemara says, I'm a basalai, and the truth is, but what he's saying regarding meat, that you can't do. You can't say this meat is for Pesach. It's like you're making a Korban Pesach. But basically, the Gemara asks in the following brisa. Rabbi Yisi says, Toidus ish Reimi. He's a very distinguished Jew in Rome. He has been a Reimi lechel gedoyim mekulasim. He made the custom of the people of Rome to eat what's called the armored goat, which was really roasted with its head on its intestines, with its insides all around, like the way the Korban Pesach was roasted, as Moses laid on the down and Aleph, because Rabbi would call it makulas. Because since you would hang the intestines on the sides, it looked like an armored guy. Guy has like full of loaded, but he has his bazooka on one side, his whole belt of. So it looked like, that's why they call it Gedim Makulas. So he got them to eat this Balei Psachim on the Seder nights. So Shalchalei, they sent to him, if you weren't Titus, that's a very distinguished person, because we would decree upon you excommunication. You're feeding the Jewish people like a Korban Pesach out of the base of Mikdash. So says the Gemara, what? What do you mean? You're feeding them a Korban Pesach? What are you talking about? Just roasting the meat that they would eat by the Seder night. Ema rather say, as if you think I'm in base, it's like very close to having the Jewish people eat kosher because it looks like kosher. One thing says the Gemara, this is the question, sounds like makulas it. What was their problem? Only because not only was it roasted, but it also had all the entrails, the insides on the sides. Shei makulas loy, but it sounds like if it didn't have all the intestines all around it, hanging on there when it's roasting, that wouldn't be a problem. So that's a good on Rav, because he said even just a regular piece of meat will get confused with the Korban Pesach. So Amir said, no, it's not difficult. And the reason for that is because Mikulas, when you do like Titus did, which was it was armored, Loishno Amad, then it doesn't make a difference if you say it's for Pesach, Loishno Loim, it doesn't make a difference if you don't say it. Even if you don't say that this meat is for Pesach and you don't mention the name, it's still going to be forbidden. And that was their problem. But She'enam Mikulas, regarding if it doesn't have all the armor around it, then Pirush, then if he says, I want this meat to be for Pesach, then yes, it's going to be forbidden because that looks like you're calling it a Korban Pesach. Loy Pirush, if you don't specify, then Loy, it's not going to be a problem, so therefore it doesn't contradict Rav. Yes, it could be a problem even without Makulas. The idea that Makulas was only if you don't say anything. That's what it was specifically Makulas. But if you do say, then it could even be like Rav, there would be a problem, even just a regular piece of meat. Now, Rav Achi Mastin Lo Lahomas Nita, here we're getting a little bit of a cheshbon, but Rav Acha taught this brisa of Toidus, Kirib Shimon. Meaning, when we said this brisa of Toidus is Raimi, it wasn't, you go back to Amad Aleph, you see that when we said it, we said Amr Rabbi Yasi, Toidus is Raimi. Now, on that, the Gemara brings that there was Rav Acha, he taught this brisa, Kirib Shimon, that it was Amr Rabbi Shimon, Toidus is Raimi. It was Rabbi Shimon who was saying this halacha. That it's karv lahachlis so kach machos. On that mask, Rav Sheish asks on this. He says, how could you say this? We understand according to the one who says this price, like the version that we said on Amad Aleph, that it was Rabbi Yasi, Nicha, it makes sense. Elaman the Masnik Reb Shimon, but according to the one that teaches like Reb Shimon, me Nicha doesn't make sense, and we didn't say exactly what this point is yet, but we're going to say in a moment what it is, what's not. We learned in the Mishnah Masechtas Menachos that there's a halacha that if someone says Harei Lai Mincha Min Asayim, someone says that I want to bring a Korban Mincha flour offering from barley. Now, the Mishnah Masechtas Menachos teaches that you're not going to bring it from the barley because there is no mincha from the barley except the Korban Ayim. So you're going to bring it from wheat. Why? Because when you say Harei Lai Mincha, when you say before you say Min Asayim, before you say the words Min Asayim, you say I'm going to bring a mincha. So we grab the first thing that you said, and the mincha is not brought from the sa'ir as in the dava. So if you're going to bring it as from wheat, that's what the Tanakh holds. On that, Reb Shimon says, no, you're exempt. Because he says what's called Av Bigmar Devar of Adam Nitfas. Not only is what you first said primary, but also what you ended up saying is also important. And his intention was for whatever he was going to say. So his intention, obviously, the way he ended off his sentence, was for a mincha of barley. Now, why did he say that? Because he thought a person could make a nadava of a flour offering of barley, and he intended to bring that. So therefore, what he said has no halachic standing. And therefore he's exempt, he doesn't have to bring any mincha. Why? He didn't donate in the way people normally donate. What type of nadav? You can't bring the nadav of barley. So therefore, you didn't say any nadav. You didn't make any nadav. You didn't do anything. So therefore, as Rashi explains, so what the Gemara is saying is also over here when he was giving these Titus Israel, he was having these people eat in Rome these roasted goats with all its intestines hanging on it. What type of karv l'kachim is bachutz over here? When the animal was alive, you didn't call it a karm Pesach, and even if you would call it Pesach meat when you were roasting it, that is like the words of Rashi, that's not the way how you mock something when it's already dead, and therefore, of course, the title of Pesach is not going to take effect on it. Just like Rabbi Shimon says, if it's not Kedech HaMasnadrim, you didn't say anything, you didn't do anything. So if you're donating a mincha of Tzayim, Rabbi Shimon holds you didn't say anything. So for sure over here, when you're taking a shechted piece of meat, you go to Gourmet Glatt and you say, oh, the flesh is a paisa. Oh, carbon Pesach, what do you mean carbon? So like, that's how a person brings a carbon Pesach. It's not you bring a carbon Pesach. You take a live animal, you mock the shit. How can you make a carbon Pesach when it's already geshechted, when it's already cleaned out, already you buy from the store or the shelf? So that's a difficulty. How can you say that the one who taught the Brisa and was saying that, oh, Titus, what are you doing over here? You're feeding people things that are almost like a carbon. It couldn't have been Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon holds if it's not Kedech HaBesnadmin, it doesn't have any sanctity whatsoever. However, only Ravina Ravashi, but Ravina asked back to Ravashi, says, wait a second. And our version that we have Naman after was Rabbi Yisi who's saying this teaching, it does make sense. But Rav said, and again, there's a little bit of a cheshbon over here, Reb Shimon, who he exempts, when you say, I want to bring a mincha from Sa'ir, and he does not make you obligated to bring a mincha from Chitin like the Tanna Kama does, because of Tafas Lashon Rishon, because the first thing that he said, if you would have just ended Harelai mincha, and not said the words of Sa'ir, so you would have brought a mincha of Chitin. So the Reb Shimon who says, no, you're not going to be obligated because of the first words that you said. You know where he's coming from? Besides the fact that he says Kedech HaMasnadrin, it's based on another halacha. B'shit Rabbi Yisi Amra, it was based on the opinion of Rabbi Yisi, which is the Amar that he says in Maseches Tamud of Chavei Mabeis. Av b'gmar dvar adam nitfas. A person also is dependent not only on the first words that he says, on the whole sentence, even the last part of a sentence. Like the Mishnah teaches, what's this Rabbi Yisi? Mishnah teaches in Maseches Tamura that someone says, I want this animal to be a Tamura of an Oila, and I want it to be a Tamura of a Shlama. Now it can't be both, obviously. It's either one or the other. So Reb Meir says, okay, the first word that you say, Tavas Lasharishan, it's going to be a Tamur of an Oila. And once you already said Tamur you're done already. Rabbi Yisi says no. If his intention initially was to say both of those halachas of Tamur and Tamur Shlamim, then since it's not possible to say two words at the same time, only Hashem could, so he had to say one after the other. So then Devar of Kayamin. And you know what's going to happen? It will be a Tamur Oila, Tamur Shlamim. How's that possible? He'll let the animal graze until it develops a blemish. He'll sell it, and he'll use half of its money for an oil and half of its money for a shlam. So that's Rabbi Yasi who holds that not only the first thing that you say is primary, even the last thing that you say is primary. So therefore, and that's where Reb Shimon is based on. Reb Shimon, who he says, Harei mincha min asayim. What do you mean min asayim? What do you mean loik nisnadu kinech b'snadu? The first thing that you said was Harei mincha. Done. Bring it from chitin. If you held to a solution, that's what you would say. But he holds like Rabbi Yasi that says no. Of course, I didn't get a chance to finish my sentence yet. Even the end of my sentence is primary. And I said, Menasayim. Oh, Menasayim. There's no double here. So says the Gemara, my love isn't it, but Reb Shimon Sabak Rabbi Yisi. For the fact Reb Shimon Sabak Rabbi Yisi on this halacha, that Begemar Dvar Vad Nitfas, that even the end of the sentence, what you say is primary, Rabbi Yisi Namas Sabak Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yisi also like Reb Shimon on his halacha, that if you're making the dava not the way of how the dava is supposed to be, then you didn't say anything. Oh, so wait a second. This of Titus, that you can't say either that it's like Rabbi Yasi. Because Rabbi Yasi is saying, oh, it's like you bring your kach machutz, Titus, what are you doing? If you weren't a great person, we would have excommunicated you. So you said it can't be Rabbi Shimon who said this halacha. And Rabbi Yasi is good. Rabbi Yasi holds like Rabbi Shimon too. He holds also, if you make kedech mazabit, that's not how you make it the davar kram pesach. That's not how you bring one. You don't say when it's already on the shelves of seasons and you're saying that I want this to be for the Seder night, for Pesach, as if you're doing a kram pesach. So how could it be Rabbi Yasi? Says Allah, no, it's not difficult. Rabbi Shimon sounds like Rabbi Yasi. Rabbi Shimon, he held like Rabbi Yasi that even with your end of your sentence, that's how a person, we decide his statement. And therefore, yes, it's going to be not the normal way of making the dove. And Shimon holds that since it wasn't a normal way of making the davar, so what you're saying has no significance. But Rabbi Yasi, so like Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yasi doesn't necessarily is married to Rabbi Shimon regarding halacha of you making the davar shlag derech that you didn't say anything. Rather, he would hold that you would have to bring a mincha of wheat. When you say Harei like mincha b'nasa'ir, Rabbi Shimon says you're going to be exempt because you didn't make any in the davar, because even the last sentence that you say is primary, and you said b'nasa'ir and you can't bring b'nasa'ir. But Rabbi Yasi actually would hold when you say Harei like mincha b'nasa'ir, you actually would have to bring a mincha of chitin. Now, not because he holds that the first thing that you say is primary, because he doesn't. He holds apik of mitzvahs. Rather, it's because the person does not say anything for nothing. And therefore, when you say Harei mincha minas ha'ayr, so then you also have to go ahead and bring from the mincha of chitin, because you're not going to say your words levatal. Now, regarding the kedima kulas, you're right. Although it's not being sanctified the way a person normally sanctifies, but it's still karav lahachal kachim b'chutz, because if he would say this is for Pesach, it would be like you would understand that it's l'demei Pesach, that as if it's for the monetary value. Here, a lot of times Rashi brings a whole new understanding. But it's basically that the way he's explaining the Gemara right now is that l'demei Pesach. So Rabbi Yishai would still hold it's a problem, because it looks like, maybe it's not the Korban Pesach itself, but you might use it for using its funds for Korban Pesach, but still it's only a problem by meat, not by wheat. But be that as it may, it's not difficult to say there was Rabbi Yishai who disagreed with Toydis and said, hey, what are you doing? Because at least according to him, he doesn't hold to this halacha of being misnadav shalei gedech and misnadav, because Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Yishai, but not necessarily Rabbi Yishai holds like Rabbi Shimon. Now, once we introduce Toydis, Ibodo, the following question: Toydis is Shloimy, Gaver Rabba Hava, was he a great person, and because of his honor, they didn't decree on him to be excommunicated? Or Bala Graven Hava, or was he a mighty person, a person of the fist, and they were afraid of him? Meaning they told him, look, if you weren't a great Toydis, we would have excommunicated. Was that because they actually, honored him and appreciated him, or because he was very mighty, a strong guy, and they were afraid of him, intimidated by him? So the Gemara says, Tashma Tzming Raya from the following brisa that it says, Oidzu Darish Toydis Yisrael. Additionally, this also was expounded by Toydis, the man of Raya. From here, you see that obviously he was a Gavar Rabba, that he was a Talmid Chacham, a great person, and that's why they didn't excommunicate him, because he said the following famous teaching, which is actually this week's parasha. What did Chanani Mishal Bazariah see? That they gave up their lives for the sanctification of Hashem. The Kishnesh into the fiery furnace, like Rashi says that they didn't expand the Chai Behem, which was supposed to live, but not supposed to die. Which Taisa discusses, what do you mean, if it's a Vaytazara or any mitzvah, but Fahasia, of course he's supposed to be Moisei Nefesh. Taisa explains it wasn't really a problem of Vaytazara or anything else, or they could have fled. Why did they want to go ahead and give up their life when seemingly they didn't have to, or maybe even that they shouldn't have done? And that says the Gemara, says Toydis, he says, Nasu Kavachem Ba'asam Tzvardim. They made a Kavachem on themselves from the frogs in Egypt. Umat Tzvardim, if the frogs, She'im Tzum HaKudosh, they have no commandment to sanctify God's name. Yet it says by them in Shlois, Uvo, they came, Va'ol B'Veisecha, they come into your house, etc. Uvitanarechen in your ovens of Mishar says Asechet to your kneading bowls. Now, Imasai Misharis Mitzuis Itzaltana, when do you have the kneading bowls near the ovens? Have Aimar B'Shasha Tanacham, when the oven is hot. Because there's ovens and there's kneading bowls, but when they're near each other, obviously you're making challah right now. And that's when the frogs specifically jumped into the ovens. So they wanted to be Moisei Nefesh. They jumped into the fire ovens to be Mekadosh Shem Shemayim, to show that the Bria is listening to the Creator. Oh, so us that we're commanded on sanctifying God's name. All the more so that we should go ahead and be Moisei Nefesh. Again, you see Toydis was a Talmid Chacham, and it wasn't because they were afraid of him. Additionally, the Gemara brings that Rabbi Yisrael Oven Alma, he brings another proof, because Matal Malai, he gave merchandise Lekishel Tamid Chachamim to the purse, to the account of Talmudic scholars, to go ahead and use as for their Amazon account, to go ahead and have what to sell, and that he provides them the merchandise that they can make money. Rabbi Yochanan said, whoever goes and gives merchandise to a Talmid Chacham that he could do business with, and then you could go ahead and share the profits, he merits, and he sits in the heavenly academy, this person who could have been an Amoritz, but he gave a Talmid Chacham money to go ahead and make business, which no one can say the Pasuk Kelis. Because in the shade of the wisdom is B'tzela Kesef, is in the shadow of the money. Meaning to say, in the area of where there's going to be wisdom, this person is going to be entered because he gave his properties, he gave from his monies to the Talmid Chacham to benefit from, and therefore he merits to be sitting in the Yeshiva Shal Ma'ala with the Talmid Chacham. Continuing our look at the next Mishnah, again, continuing on this theme regarding Makom Shenagu, a place that the custom is Lahadlik Es Aner B'Leil Yom Kippurim, to light candles on the night of Yom Kippur, which must explain why would they do that. So Madlikin, so then they would have it lit. They wouldn't light it on the night of Yom Kippur, you would have it lit. Makom Shenagu Shloi Lahadlik, a place that the custom was not to have it lit. So Madlikin, they wouldn't have it lit. But either way, Madlikim about the consistency, you light the candles in the shuls, about the madrashas, in the study halls, umavois, ha'afeilim, and the dark alleyways, and on top of the sick people. Now, time we learn the Brisa, interesting idea, says the Gemara. Bein sham lahadlik, whether it was a place that the custom was to light, ubein sham shalai lahadlik, whether it was a place that the custom was not to light a candle, shneim l'dov yachad niskamu. Both of them, even though it's opposite in Hagim, they're both focusing and intending for the same idea, which was to prevent marital intimacy. And that is the ones who would say to light the candle was because we know that a person is not supposed to have intimacy by a candle. So therefore by having the candle will actually prevent marital intimacy. Those who said not to light a candle, they felt that no, when you have a lit candle, then he sees his wife and he desires to be intimate with her, so better not to have the candles. And Rabbi Shloimy says, interesting, Darish Rav expounded a pasuk in Yeshaya. Va'amich, we know this pasuk we say by Pirkei Avos, Va'amich kulim tzadikim. Your people are all righteous people. La'olim yishu aretz v'gemer, forever they will inherit the land, etc. Which means that what do you mean all of them are righteous? Because it's so interesting. Bein sha'am lahadlik, bein sha'am shaloi lahadlik. Even though you can have Jews doing exact opposite. Someone saying light the candle, someone saying not light the candle. Both are intending for the same idea. That's the beauty of the Jewish people. You can have people that are opposite ends of the spectrum, and they're all coming to the same point of fulfilling that same purpose. Now, continuing with that, relate back. The Gemara introduces halacha. We'll see back. It relates back to the halacha we're discussing. I'm going to read the Mishmul. He says that you don't make a bracha on fire, which Trace discusses why would that be? Why taka don't we make a bracha? Aren't you supposed to make a bracha on everything you have pleasure? He says that's only something with your body, but regarding something like a candle, although we make a bracha every day on the light of the sun, that comes every day, but you don't make a bracha on light. Matzah Shabbos, only on Matzah Shabbos. Why? Because as we'll just see on the next daf, the initial formation of fire happened on Matzah Shabbos with Adam, that he scraped two stones together and he made fire. Since that was when it was created, so Matzah Shabbos when we make the bracha a bar ma'oreh ha'esh. However, but there was this elder, some say it was Rabbi Babachan, I remember his name, because that's going to come in for the next Gemara. He says, Yishar, yeah, you should be strengthened, you said well. Because Rabbi Yechon said this idea that you only make a bracha on the fire, Matzah Shabbos, and no other time. However, the Gemara brings a story. Ula was riding on a donkey and he was going. And as he was going, he had Rabba Mimine, he had Rabba on his right side. For Rabba Babachana, only had this Rabba Babachana on his left side. So Amalei Rabba Ula, so Rabba was on the right side, said to Ula, he says, is this really true that I heard in your name, that you, meaning the plural, he was talking to the two of them, is it true that I heard about you people that you say in the name of Rabbi Yechanan that Eim Avarchan ala Orel b'Matzah Shabbos, you only make a bracha on fire on Matzah Shabbos? Who, since this is when it was initially created. So Hadar Ula Chazda be'Rabba b'Chana Bishu. So Ula, who was in the middle, turned to his left and he gave like what's called a dirty look to Rabba B'Chana, saying, "Are you the one that said this in the name of Rabbi Yechanan?" But that's not what Rabbi Yechanan said. As we're going to shortly quote, Rabbi Yechanan also said it. Even by Matzah Yom Kippurim did you make a bracha by Ma'esh. And the reason that is because it's still a novelty of Matzah Yom Kippurim, because you were forbidden to make fire. Every Yom Tov you can make fire. Yom Kippur has like halacha like Shabbos, that's forbidden all day. And only now you could have benefit from it. So he gave him a dirty look. He's saying, are you the one that... So Amalei Rabbi Chana said to him, no. Although that's what we quoted before, Rabbi Chana said, Yish Rabbi Chana Rabbi Yechanan, so it's not true. No lava ha'amri. I didn't say that on this halacha. Ela ha'amri. Rather, I said this in the name of Rabbi Yechanan on something else, which was going on a teacher of Brises. Because what happened was the Tani Kamei Rabbi Yechanan. There was a teacher of Brises who said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Shimon Lazar, he says, Yomei Kippurim shchalias b'Shabbos. If Yom Kippurim falls out on Shabbos, this is where it relates back to the halacha of Mishnah. Even in the place where they say that generally in the night of Yom Kippurim, not to light a candle. Madlikin, they covered Shabbos. But if Yom Kippur falls on Shabbos, then you would light a candle simply because on covered Shabbos, one Allah is the only Shabbos covered Shabbos, you're supposed to have lit candles. On that one, that's what I said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan responded to the one that taught in the Brisa that no, the Chacham actually say no, it's forbidden to light the candle, even Yom Kippur that falls out on Shabbos, until Matzah Shabbos. So I didn't mention the name of Rabbi Yechanan regarding a regular Matzah Shabbos, that you only light on a regular Matzah Shabbos. I was saying on this case that when Shabbos is Friday, is the night of Yom Kippur, is the night of Friday night. I said that you don't light it on the night of Yom Kippurim, you light only Matzah Shabbos, which is the Matzah Yom Kippurim. That's what I said. I never said that it should only be, they thought what I was saying was in general, regarding the bracha on the Or, on Moira Eish, that I said that you should never do it only on the Matzah Shabbos, and not on the Matzah Yom Kippurim. That's not what I was saying. I was saying that when when Yom Kippur is on Friday night, don't light it then, only light it on Matzah Shabbos, which is Matzah Yom Kippur. And therefore, that don't look at me like as if I said, the Rabbi Yechanan said, that you should only light on Matzah Shabbos, not Matzah Yom Kippur. And Adam Alei, Ula said, Adote, okay, that should be. In other words, that I agree that Rabbi Yechanan did say. So the Gemara brings a very fascinating pasuk. Karle Rav Yisuf. So Rav Yisuf said, regarding what happened, a pasuk in Mishlei, Mayim Amukim, deep waters, are Eitz Ablev Ish, is counsel in the person's heart. And as you continue to Nandal Man Aleph, the Ish Kivun Yidlena, an intelligent person will draw it out. So what does this mean? This is what I tell people all the time, that if you want to know what you get in therapy, you get this pasuk. Different than if you're going and ask people counsel or getting eitzes from somebody. Listen to how the Gemara translates what the pasuk is saying. Mayim Amukim Eitz Ablev Ish. Deep waters are counsel in the person's heart. Zet Ula. This refers to Ula. What does this mean? So Rashi explains. He says that he understood from the words of Rabba that there was a mistake over here. So he gave a look at Rabbi Barachani, but he didn't say anything. He didn't tell him anything. And that's what Eitz Ablev Ish is, that he kept it in his heart and he didn't tell him, why did you say this? So actually there's two layers over here. There's the simple understanding of the pasuk, which is that actually the person has inside of himself the deep waters, and the smart person draws it out. But the way the Gemara is translating over here is that Ula himself had something that he wanted to say. He had Eitz Ablev Ish, but he didn't. He just gave him a look. He had just from his body language. Now, the Ish Tvun Yidlena, and this is the main point that the Gemara says that, but an intelligent person could draw it out, meaning Rabbi Bachana understood what was in the heart of Ula, who was looking at him that way. That was Rabbi Bachana, which means to say you don't. A smart person doesn't tell. He knows how to draw out from the person what's going on inside of his heart, and therefore he says that over here he had something he wanted to tell him, but he couldn't even tell him, and that was the deep waters inside of himself, that he has his own eitzes. You have inside of you what you need, but you need a smart person to help you bring it out. And he said he's talking his body language, and that's what's important to get. Zoom sessions are not so effective. You have to have like person to person. You see what's going on, and you say, it looks like, and you pull it out from the person. That was what Rabbi Chana did. Now, said the Gemara concludes ve'inu, and they, meaning Ula and Rabba, that didn't want to agree to the version that Rabba had said, that it's only that you make a bar mitzvah on Matzah Shabbos. Come on, so who do they hold like? Says the Gemara, because a different version of Rabbi Yechanan. And Mavarchan al or you make a bracha on fire, bein Matzah Shabbos and bein Matzah Yom Kippur. You don't only make it on Matzah Shabbos, you also make it on Matzah Yom Kippur. And so this is the custom that people have, that we make a bar mitzvah not only on Matzah Shabbos, but we also make it on Matzah Yom Kippur. Therefore they said that you said this, and he said, no, I didn't say it. I only said in a different halacha regarding when Shabbos is Yom Kippurim, which again was that discussion of our Mishnah regarding do you light a candle or not. And he was saying that the one who said for the B'yichna says, okay, then you're going to light, and he said, no, even then you're not going to light if it's not Yom Kippurim. So we discussed in today's Daf Pesachim Daf Gimel was, we said that you continue eating the Shemitah produce until it finishes the last one. So we had a whole brisa with grapes and olives and dates and figs and all those. Now we had a machlekes parenthetical if the dates, the unripe dates are beisinis, does that make it pre for meiser only? And that's, you have to give a meiser. Even for Shemitah, we'll say that, don't consider fruits out there. But being that as an aid, there was a steer, there's a contradiction between two brises, that which one is the latest place. So we have either because they're the same thing, one is just zman, and one is malkan, so the same thing, or the first brisa says if there's something later, you could eat on them. So everyone agrees to the same premise. It's just giving you these places, but of course everyone agrees the latest time that is still available in the wild, you can still continue eating the Shemitah produce in your house. Then we said a sign for different places, for mountains are walnut trees, for valleys is date palm trees, and the nafkamina, said the Gemara, was for Bikurim, because you can't bring the dates from the mountains and only from the valleys, because you have to bring it from the place where it's primary for, because you have to bring the meshubach, the best for the Bikurim. Said a sign for the streams are reeds. Nachal Esan, which is where you do the halacha of the Egla Arufa. That's got to be that there has reeds growing over there. A sign for a shvela, for a plain with an AI, is shikama, a sycamore tree, which has a ramification for business if you're selling, and really all of them have the halacha for Mecca Memcha. If you say you're selling a mountain, it's got to be that there's the golna trees on it, and so on and so forth. We're into the next Mishnah regarding, again, the theme of Mokim Shanagu. If the custom is to sell small livestock, that depends on the Minhag HaMokim. But we said, according to everyone, you don't sell the large livestock. However, if you're permitted by the broken, animal has a break because he's not going to do work with it, and the horse also is not a problem because there's no work done with it, you just ride on it, and that's just at most a shvus. We said that the roasted meat on the Seder night, that also depends on the Minhag. Said you can't say in the Gemara says you can't say this meat is for Pesach, because it looks like you're being maked and like you're eating kachim bachot. But wheat, that's not a problem. That looks like you're saying just putting it away for Pesach. Now, makulas, when it's roasted with the intestines on the outside, that doesn't make a difference if you say or not. That looks like carbon bachutz. When it's not makulas, that's what we said specifically. That's the Hebrew rabbi. You not say this is for Pesach, because that looks like you're being makdish kachim bachutz. Shimon said, however, that is no problem because it's not the shleika derech hamasnadrim. So according to him, the toidus wouldn't be a problem because well, it doesn't look like kachim. It's only if you did it in the normal way. And gedima kulas, you didn't call it a carbon pesach when it's still alive. So it's shleika derech magdishin, it wouldn't have any designation. But Rabbi Yasi, the Gemara says that version does make sense because he's not like Rabbi Shimon. Even though Rabbi Shimon is like Rabbi Yasi is not like Rabbi Shimon, and he would hold even shleika derech hamasnadrim. It would be a problem with that nirik kachim b'chutz. We said Tosis Shremer was a great person, not a mighty person. Like we see, he was a baldarshan and expounded the famous teaching Chanan Shov Azariah. They gave up their life, Kavachamas from the Tzfar, this week's parsha, and he also gave them the Talmid Chachamim merchandise to do business with, which then a person merits to be in the Yeshiva Shamal. We went on to the next Mishnah, again, also continuing with Minhagim regarding lighting candles on the night of Yom Kippurim, which, as the Gemara explained, really, both Minhagim mean to do the same thing to prevent marital intimacy, which is forbidden on Yom Kippurim. They made a machlekes regarding do you make a bracha on the candle on only Matzah Shabbos, or is it even on Matzah Yom Kippurim? Thank you for anytime for hosting us. Oh, we said machlekes, if according to everyone, you light on the night of Yom Kippurim, that falls out to be on Shabbos, or even then you wouldn't light a candle. Right.